the hand pressed against her waist from behind, fingers spreading possessively across the fabric of her blouse. Brooklyn Hayes felt the hot breath on her neck, smelled the expensive cologne mixed with arrogance. "Nobody will believe you," Mason Rodriguez whispered, his 18-year-old voice dripping with entitlement. The crack that followed echoed through the empty chemistry lab like a gunshot. Then came the screaming. Brooklyn Hayes thought her biggest challenge would be managing 30 teenagers hopped up on energy drinks and TikTok. 23 years old, fresh out of her teaching credential program. She'd walked into Lincoln High School with the same confidence that had carried her through 2 tours in Afghanistan. The morning Arizona sun painted golden stripes across the classroom floor as she arranged the DNA models for her first period biology class. Her military issue watch read 0730, right on schedule. If you're feeling that rush of what's going to happen next, hit that like button. It really helps more people discover these stories. And if you want to share where you're watching from, drop it in the comments below. For those who want to support more stories like this one, there's a thanks button right under this video. Every contribution, no matter how small, helps me bring you more inspiring tales of courage and standing up for what's right. Thank you for being here. Now, let's see what happens when push comes to shove. "Good morning, future scientists," she said, her voice carrying the kind of authority that made students automatically straighten in their seats. Most of them, anyway. In the back row, Mason Rodriguez lounged like he owned the place, which, considering his father donated $2 million to the school last year, wasn't far from the truth. Brooklyn noticed him immediately, not because of his perfectly styled hair or designer clothes that probably cost more than her monthly rent. She noticed him because of the way he looked at her. She'd seen that look before, in darker places, worn by more dangerous men. But those men had guns and grudges. This was just a boy with too much money and not enough boundaries. "Today we're diving into the building blocks of life itself," Brooklyn announced, clicking through her presentation. "Can anyone tell me what DNA stands for?" Hands shot up across the room. Brooklyn called on a quiet girl in the front row as the student answered. Brooklyn's peripheral vision caught Mason typing on his phone. She made a mental note but continued teaching. The lesson flowed beautifully. Students asked questions, participated in discussions, even laughed at her biology jokes for 45 minutes. Brooklyn felt like she'd found her calling. Then the Google Classroom notification popped up on her laptop. Private message from Mason Rodriguez. "DNA might be the building blocks of life, but you're definitely building something in me. Miss Hayes, that skirt should be illegal." Brooklyn's jaw tightened, but her expression remained neutral. She screenshotted the message immediately, saved it to a folder she'd learned to label documentation during her military days. Evidence first, action second. Always. After class, as students filed out, Mason lingered. He approached her desk with a swagger that belonged in a bad teen movie. "Great lesson, Miss Hayes. Really stimulating. Mr. Rodriguez, please maintain appropriate boundaries," Brooklyn said, her tone professional but firm. "If you have questions about the material, I'm happy to help during office hours." He leaned against her desk, too close. "Oh, I have lots of questions, like, what made you want to become a teacher? Couldn't have been the money." "Please, step back from my desk." Mason smiled but didn't move. "Just being friendly. You seem tense. Maybe you need to relax a little." "Office hours are Tuesdays and Thursdays," Brooklyn repeated. "Now please, head to your next class." He finally pushed off from her desk, but not before his hand accidentally knocked over her coffee mug. As Brooklyn reached to catch it, Mason's eyes traveled down her body in a way that made her skin crawl. "See you tomorrow, Miss Hayes," he said, drawing out her name like it tasted good. That was week 1. By week 2, the accidents multiplied. Mason would bump into her in the hallway, always apologizing with that same predatory smile. He started sitting in different seats each day, always choosing the one with the best view of her as she wrote on the board. His friends, Jaden Torres with his basketball team jacket and Connor Walsh with his nervous laugh, began showing up early to class, making comments just loud enough for her to hear. "Damn, military girls really do have the best." "Mr. Torres," Brooklyn interrupted, "perhaps you'd like to share your thoughts on cellular respiration with the class?" The boy's face flushed. "Nah, Miss Hayes, I'm good." She documented everything, every comment, every accidental touch, every inappropriate message. The folder on her laptop grew thicker. 2 years of combat intelligence training had taught her that documentation was ammunition. Week 3 brought the meeting she'd been expecting. "Miss Hayes, please have a seat," Vice Principal Derek Chen said, gesturing to a chair across from his imposing desk. The office smelled like old leather and disappointment. Photos of Chen shaking hands with various donors covered the walls. In the place of honor, Richard Rodriguez and his $1 million smile. "I've received some concerns," Chen began, shuffling papers he wasn't really reading. "About your treatment of certain students." Brooklyn kept her face neutral. "Which students? Specifically, the Rodriguez family feels you've been targeting their son. Unfair grading, harsh discipline. You understand these are serious allegations." "I understand completely," Brooklyn said, pulling out her phone, "which is why I've documented every interaction. Would you like to review the inappropriate messages he's sent? Or perhaps the security footage of him following me to my car last Tuesday?" Chen's face tightened. "I'm sure these are just misunderstandings. Mason is a spirited young man. His father speaks very highly of him. His father donated $2 million last year," Brooklyn said flatly. Chen's eye twitched. "That's neither here nor there. I'm simply suggesting you might want to adjust your approach for everyone's benefit." Brooklyn stood. "Is there anything else, Mr. Chen? Just remember, Miss Hayes, we're a family here at Lincoln High. Families protect each other." She left his office with her stomach churning. That night, she sat in her small apartment, staring at photos from her military days. Sergeant Hayes in full gear, surrounded by her squad in Afghanistan. She'd led 12 soldiers through hell and brought them all home. She wasn't about to let some entitled teenager drive her away from a job she loved. Her phone buzzed. Unknown number. "Heard you met with Chen. Smart man. Knows how things work. Unlike some people, R. Richard Rodriguez." Brooklyn screenshotted that too. The next morning brought a new development. Connor Walsh approached her after class, fidgeting with his backpack straps. "Miss Hayes, can I talk to you?" Brooklyn noticed his friends weren't around. "Of course. Connor, what's on your mind?" He glanced at the door, then back at her. "It's about Mason. Look, I probably shouldn't tell you this. Connor, if something's wrong, there's a bet," he blurted out, "in our group chat, about you." Brooklyn's blood chilled, but she kept her voice steady. "What kind of bet?" Connor pulled out his phone, hands shaking. "Whoever makes you quit first gets $1,000. But Mason, he scrolled through messages. Mason bet 5,000 he could. It's okay. Connor, you're doing the right thing. He said he could make you beg for it by the end of the semester. Connor's face was red with shame. I'm sorry, Miss Hayes. I should have said something sooner. Brooklyn took photos of the group chat with her own phone. Thank you for telling me. This took courage. There's more, Connor said quietly. He did this before. Other teachers. That evening, Brooklyn's Facebook Messenger lit up with a message from someone named Sarah Chen. No relation to the vice principal, apparently. Hi, I taught English at Lincoln last year. I heard through the grapevine you're dealing with Mason Rodriguez. I lasted 3 months before I quit. We should talk. They met at a coffee shop downtown. Sarah was 26, pretty, with the kind of tired eyes Brooklyn recognized from her mirror lately. He started the same way with me, Sarah said, gripping her latte. Comments, messages, accidents. I reported everything. Nothing happened. Then, one day, he cornered me in the supply closet. When I screamed, he played it off like I was crazy, said he was just getting paper. What about the security footage? Sarah laughed bitterly. Mysteriously corrupted. Just that one file. Funny how that happens, right? Did you go to the police? With what? My word against the son of the richest man in the district. His father's lawyers would have destroyed me, so I quit. Moved to Tucson, started over. Who else? Brooklyn asked. Sarah pulled out her phone. Jessica Martinez, sophomore year Spanish teacher, lasted 2 months. Amanda Foster, freshman math, 6 weeks. There's a pattern. Brooklyn, young female teachers, pretty, new to the district. No connections, no protection. Brooklyn felt rage building in her chest, the kind she hadn't felt since watching a convoy get ambushed outside Kandahar. And nobody does anything. The Rodriguez family owns half the school board. Their donations keep the sports programs running. The arts funded. What's a few teachers compared to that? That night, Brooklyn couldn't sleep. She did what she always did when her mind raced. She trained. The 24-hour gym was mostly empty at 2 a.m. Brooklyn wrapped her hands methodically. Each loop of tape a meditation. She'd started learning Krav Maga in the military. Your size is an advantage, her instructor had said. They never expect the small ones to fight back. Use their overconfidence against them. The heavy bag took her fury without complaint. Jab, cross, elbow, knee. Each strike precise, controlled. Muscle memory from hundreds of hours of practice. In combat, hesitation killed. In life, it just let the predators win. Her phone buzzed. Another unknown number. Working out this late isn't healthy. Miss Hayes, you should be in bed. I could help with that. M. Brooklyn's blood went cold. He was watching her. She scanned the gym. Saw nothing unusual, but there were windows everywhere. Shadows in the parking lot. She grabbed her gear and left quickly, checking her mirrors all the way home. The next day, she arrived at school to find a gift on her desk. Victoria's Secret bag. Tissue paper pristine. The card read, "For after hours, can't wait to see it on you." Or off. Brooklyn photographed everything, then dumped it straight in the trash. During lunch, she updated her documentation folder and emailed copies to her personal account. Her sister in Colorado, and a friend from the military who worked in law enforcement. Insurance policies. Mason strolled in during her prep period. No knock, no permission. "You didn't like my gift?" he asked, fake hurt in his voice. "You need to leave. Now. Public school, public classroom. I have every right to be here." He sat on a desk, legs spread wide. "Besides, we need to talk about my grade. You have a B+. Your work is adequate." "Adequate?" He stood, moved closer. "Nothing about me is just adequate. Miss Hayes, I think you know that." Brooklyn stood her ground. "Get out of my classroom." "Or what? You'll report me. How's that working out for you?" His cologne invaded her space as he leaned in. "My dad owns this school. The board. Hell, he probably owns you too. Just doesn't know it yet." "Last warning," Mason laughed. "God, you're hot when you're trying to be tough. Tell me, did the Army teach you how to handle a real man?" "The Army taught me how to handle hostiles. Want a demonstration?" For a second, something flickered in his eyes. Fear, excitement. Then his usual smirk returned. "Threatening a student. Miss Hayes, that won't look good in your file." He left, but not before dragging his finger across her desk, maintaining eye contact the whole time. Brooklyn's hands shook as she called her union representative. The conversation was short and depressing, without concrete physical evidence or witnesses. It was her word against his. The union would support her, but recommended she document everything and avoid being alone with the student. "I'm already doing that," Brooklyn said through gritted teeth. "Then, unfortunately, there's not much else we can do at this stage. Unless he actually assaults me." "I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the burden of proof in these situations." Brooklyn hung up. That afternoon, she noticed something new. Her Google Calendar, which she kept meticulously updated, showed signs of unauthorized access. Someone had viewed her schedule. They knew when she had prep periods, when she stayed late for tutoring, when she'd be alone. Time for countermeasures. Brooklyn created a fake schedule, visible to anyone who'd hacked her account. According to the false calendar, she'd be staying late Friday for lab equipment inventory. Alone. 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. Perfect hunting hours. She also made a purchase that night. A small body camera, the kind that looked like a button. Her military pension didn't leave much room for extras, but this was survival equipment. Thursday brought Derek Chen back into the picture. He caught her in the hallway between classes. "Miss Hayes, a moment?" His office felt smaller this time, the donor photos more prominent. "I'm concerned about your well-being," he said, not meeting her eyes. Teaching can be stressful, especially for someone dealing with past trauma. Brooklyn's jaw clenched. "Excuse me." "Your military service. PTSD is nothing to be ashamed of. But if it's affecting your perception of reality, causing paranoia..." "Are you seriously suggesting..." "I'm suggesting you might benefit from some time off to get perspective. The district has excellent mental health resources." "I don't need mental health resources. I need administrators who do their job." Chen's mask slipped. "Be very careful, Miss Hayes. You're not in the military anymore. This is the real world. And in the real world, the Rodriguez family's contributions keep our doors open. Without them, we lose the music program, the theater, the computer lab. How many students suffer for your ego? How many teachers have suffered for your cowardice?" Chen stood. "This conversation is over. But think about what I said. A leave of absence, voluntary." "Of course, for now." Brooklyn left his office knowing she was running out of time. They were closing ranks. preparing to force her out. But she'd been outnumbered before. In Afghanistan, her squad had held a position for 18 hours against a force 3 times their size. She'd learned that sometimes. You had to let the enemy think they were winning. Let them get overconfident. Let them come to you. Friday arrived with unusual quiet. Mason had been absent Thursday, which only made Brooklyn more nervous. Predators didn't give up. They just changed tactics. She taught her classes, maintained her routine, checked her body camera battery obsessively. At 3:30, as the school emptied out, she made her way to the chemistry lab for her fake inventory session. The lab was in the oldest part of the building, down a hallway that the security cameras hadn't reached yet. Budget constraints, Chen had explained at a faculty meeting. Brooklyn suspected it was more about plausible deniability. She began actually doing inventory, making it look real for anyone watching. The minute hand on the wall clock crawled toward 4. Brooklyn felt the familiar pre-combat calm settling over her, breathing steady, muscles loose but ready. 4:05. The door opened. Mason entered first, followed by Jaden and Connor. The 3 of them spread out, a practiced maneuver. Connor looked sick, but he took his position by the side door anyway. "Working late on a Friday?" Mason asked. "That's dedication. I like that in a woman. Gentlemen, you need to leave." Brooklyn kept her voice steady, hand resting casually near the camera button. "But we're here to help," Jaden said, pulling out his phone, already recording. Brooklyn noted, "Community service looks good on college applications." Mason moved closer, each step calculated. "Besides, you shouldn't be alone. It's not safe. Anything could happen." "Is that a threat?" "It's concern," Mason said, his father's smile on his young face. "I worry about you, Miss Hayes, all alone, no husband, no boyfriend, must get lonely." Brooklyn activated the camera with a subtle press. "I'm fine. Now leave. You know what your problem is." Mason circled her like a shark. "You think you're special. Military this. Tough girl that. But at the end of the day, you're just another teacher. And I'm a Rodriguez." "Connor," Brooklyn tried. "You don't want to be part of this." The boy looked away. Mason laughed. "Connor does what I tell him. They all do. That's how the world works. The sooner you accept that, the easier this gets. Easier for who? Both of us." Mason was close now. Too close, Brooklyn could smell his breath mint, failing to mask the whiskey underneath. "You could have made this simple, smiled more, worn shorter skirts, been friendlier. But no, you had to be difficult." Brooklyn backed toward the chemical storage shelf, letting him think he was cornering her. "Stay back. Or what? You'll break my wrist." He laughed. "Yeah, I heard about your Krav Maga. Cute. But this isn't Afghanistan. Soldier girl, no one's coming to save you." He was close enough now that Brooklyn could see the dilated pupils, the flush of excitement on his neck. Behind him, Jaden had found the perfect angle for his phone. This was choreographed. They'd done this before. "Last chance," Brooklyn said quietly. Mason's hand reached out, fingers grazing her hip. "I don't need another chance. I take what I want." Time slowed. Brooklyn's mind catalogued everything in an instant. Mason's weight distribution slightly forward. Jaden focused on his phone screen. Connor turned away, unable to watch. The chemical shelf behind her, sturdy enough to brace against. The emergency shower cord to her left. Exit routes blocked, but accessible if needed. Mason's hand pressed harder, sliding around to her lower back. His other hand reached for her face. "Nobody will believe you," he whispered, lips inches from her ear. "Even if they did, they wouldn't care. You're nobody. I'm a Rodriguez." Brooklyn felt the familiar calm of muscle memory taking over. 2 years of daily training. Hundreds of hours preparing for moments like this. Her instructor's voice echoed, "In Krav Maga, we don't wait for the perfect moment. We create it." "You're right," Brooklyn said softly. "Nobody would believe me." Mason smiled, mistaking her words for surrender. His grip tightened, pulling her against him. "But they'll believe the camera." Mason's eyes widened as the words registered, but it was already too late. Brooklyn's body moved with the precision of a Swiss watch, each motion flowing into the next. Her left hand trapped his wrist against her waist while her right hand seized his thumb. The technique was simple, brutal, and effective. She rotated his wrist outward while stepping into his body, using his own momentum against him. The crack was sharp and definitive, like a branch snapping under too much weight. Mason's scream filled the chemistry lab as his wrist bent at an angle that defied anatomy. But Brooklyn wasn't finished. As he doubled over in pain, she maintained control of his broken wrist, using it to guide him face first into the lab bench. "Bro," Jaden dropped his phone, rushing forward. "What the—" Brooklyn pivoted smoothly, releasing Mason only to meet Jaden's charge. The basketball player was bigger, stronger, but he telegraphed his movements like a neon sign. He reached for her with both hands, probably planning to grab and restrain. Instead, he found himself grabbing air. Brooklyn ducked under his arms, her elbow driving up into his solar plexus with surgical precision. As he gasped for breath, she captured his extended right arm, stepped behind him, and applied a standing arm bar. The technique required no strength, only leverage and timing. "Stop, please!" Jaden screamed as pressure built in his elbow joint. "I can't—" Another crack. Another scream. Jaden collapsed beside Mason, cradling his hyperextended elbow. The whole sequence had taken less than 8 seconds. Connor stood frozen by the door, his face pale as printer paper. His phone shook in his hands, still recording everything. "Don't," Brooklyn said quietly. "Just don't." Connor raised his hands in surrender, backing against the wall. "I'm sorry, Miss Hayes. I'm so sorry. I didn't want to. They made me." Mason writhed on the floor, his perfect hair now matted with sweat. "You're dead," he screamed through his tears. "My father will destroy you. You'll never teach again. You'll be in jail by morning." Brooklyn calmly walked to the wall and pulled the emergency shower cord. Cold water cascaded down, soaking all 3 boys and washing away any trace DNA evidence from the confrontation. Then she pulled out her phone and dialed 3 numbers. 911. What's your emergency? This is Brooklyn Hayes at Lincoln High School. I'm a teacher in the chemistry lab. Building C, 3 male students just attempted to sexually assault me. I was forced to defend myself. 2 have injuries requiring medical attention. Ma'am, are you safe now? Yes. The attackers are incapacitated. Please send police and paramedics. They're on their way. Stay on the line. Brooklyn looked at Connor, who was still filming. "Connor, I need you to save that video. Email it to yourself. Upload it to the cloud. Make copies. Can you do that?" He nodded frantically, fingers flying over his phone screen. Mason tried to stand, slipped in the water, crashed back down. "It's assault." She assaulted us. We were just talking. Mason, Brooklyn said calmly, I'm wearing a body camera. It recorded everything. Your hands on me, your words, your threats. The color drained from his face, for the first time in his life. Mason Rodriguez looked genuinely afraid. That's illegal. You can't record without consent. Arizona is a one-party consent state, Brooklyn replied. I can record any conversation I'm part of. They taught us that in the military, along with how to deal with enemy combatants. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder. Jaden whimpered, trying to cradle his arm without moving it. The chemistry lab looked like a war zone, water everywhere. Bodies on the ground, the acrid smell of fear mixing with cleaning chemicals. The first officers arrived within minutes. Officer Martinez and Officer Williams. Both veterans who'd seen enough to know what they were looking at. They took in the scene. 3 large male students, 1 small female teacher. Defensive injuries only. Ma'am, can you tell us what happened? Officer Martinez asked, hand resting on his body cam to ensure it was recording. Brooklyn gave a clear, concise report. Military bearing. Just the facts. She showed them the body camera, played back the crucial moments. Mason's hands on her. His words. The clear threat and intent. Holy shit, Officer Williams muttered, then caught himself. Sorry, ma'am, that's clear self-defense if I've ever seen it. The paramedics arrived, immediately attending to Mason and Jaden. Both boys tried to spin their version of events, but the evidence was overwhelming. Connor, to his credit, handed over his phone to police without being asked. I recorded everything, he said quietly. They planned this. There's a group chat. Other stuff. I'll testify. Derek Chen arrived as they were loading Mason into the ambulance. His face cycled through emotions like a slot machine. Confusion, concern, calculation, panic. What happened here? He demanded. Your failure to protect your staff happened. Officer Martinez said bluntly, we'll need to see all security footage, personnel files, previous complaints. I don't think that's necessary. It's not a request. Richard Rodriguez's arrival was announced by the screech of Lamborghini tires in the parking lot. He swept into the scene like he owned it, which, Brooklyn supposed. He thought he did. Armani suit, perfect silver hair, the kind of tan that came from yachts and golf courses. Where's my son? He barked. Who's responsible for this, Mr. Rodriguez? Officer Martinez stepped forward. Your son is receiving medical treatment. He's been placed under arrest for attempted sexual assault. That's ridiculous. Do you know who I am? I do, said a new voice. FBI Special Agent Sarah Chen. And yes, she was Derek's cousin, which would become relevant later, stepped out of an unmarked sedan. Which is why we're here. Rodriguez's tan faded. FBI, this is a school matter. Is it? Agent Chen smiled coldly. We've been investigating a pattern of bribery, cover-ups, and civil rights violations at this school for 6 months. Your son just gave us the probable cause we needed. She turned to Derek Chen. We'll need your hard drives, all of them. The next hours blurred together. Brooklyn gave her statement multiple times, each detail consistent. The body camera footage was pristine quality. Audio crystal clear. Connor's video provided a second angle, showing Brooklyn trying to retreat, showing her repeated warnings. But the real bombshell came from Connor's phone. Not just the video, but screenshots of the group chat going back months. The betting pool. Mason's previous victims named and mocked. Plans to drug a substitute teacher. Jokes about breaking in the new meat. Jesus, Agent Chen muttered, scrolling through the evidence. This is a criminal enterprise. By midnight, the story had exploded online. Connor's video went viral within hours. Wrong move soldiers started trending. News vans surrounded the school. Richard Rodriguez's lawyers arrived in a fleet of black cars. But there was nothing they could do. The evidence was overwhelming, undeniable, and spreading faster than they could contain it. Brooklyn spent the night at the police station, not as a suspect, but as a witness. Agent Chen brought her coffee and sat with her. "You did everything right," the agent said. "The documentation, the camera, staying calm, textbook perfect." "I was trained for worse," Brooklyn replied simply. "Still, most people freeze. You fought. I wasn't fighting. I was surviving." The next morning brought a tsunami of revelations. The FBI raids on the Rodriguez businesses uncovered years of financial irregularities, the payments to school board members, the hush money to previous victims, Derek Chen's personal accounts showing deposits coinciding with complaints being buried. 3 former teachers came forward, then 5, then 12. The pattern was clear, systematic, protected by money and power. Young female teachers targeted, harassed, driven out. Some paid to stay quiet. Others just disappeared from the profession entirely. Mason and Jaden were charged as adults. The prosecutor argued their coordinated plan showed adult sophistication. Connor was granted immunity in exchange for testimony. He became the star witness, his guilt driving him to reveal everything. "I knew it was wrong," he told the grand jury. "But Mason, you didn't say no to Mason. His dad owned cops, teachers, everyone, until Miss Hayes. She didn't care who his dad was." The trial was swift. Mason's lawyers tried to argue Brooklyn used excessive force, but the medical expert shut that down. The injuries are consistent with standard Krav Maga defensive techniques. The force used was proportional to the threat. 2 healthy 18-year-old males against 1 female teacher. She showed remarkable restraint. Mason got 7 years. Jaden got 3. Richard Rodriguez got 15 for racketeering, bribery, and conspiracy. Derek Chen got 5 years and would never work in education again. But the real victory came 6 months later. Brooklyn stood in front of a packed auditorium, teaching self-defense to over 200 educators. The district had hired her as self-defense training coordinator, a new position created specifically for her. "The first rule of self-defense," she told her audience, "is documentation. The second is boundaries. The third is action. But the most important rule, never let them silence you." She demonstrated the wrist control technique that had started everything. Teachers paired up, practicing slowly, building muscle memory. In the back row, Connor Walsh watched quietly. He'd graduated early, was heading to college to study criminal justice. He'd asked to attend the training. "I want to help," he'd told Brooklyn. "Make sure this never happens again." "You already did," she'd replied, "when you chose to do the right thing." The training session ended with applause. Brooklyn packed up her equipment, the same methodical process she'd learned in the military. Order from chaos, strength from preparation. Principal Martinez, the new principal, hired specifically for her zero-tolerance stance on harassment, approached as Brooklyn finished. "Excellent session," Martinez said. "The teachers feel empowered. They should. They always had the power, they just needed permission to use it. Speaking of which, there's someone here to see you. Brooklyn turned to find a young woman, maybe 22, standing nervously by the door. New teacher. Brooklyn could tell immediately. The fresh-faced optimism hadn't been beaten out of her yet. Miss Hayes, I'm Jennifer Morgan. I start teaching English next week. I just wanted to thank you. For what? For fighting back, for showing us we could. Jennifer's voice grew stronger. My mentor teacher told me what happened, how you refused to be another statistic. It made me realize I could do this job without being afraid. Brooklyn smiled. You'll be a great teacher. Just remember, document everything. Trust your instincts. And never let anyone make you feel like you don't belong. As Jennifer left, Brooklyn's phone buzzed. A message from her old squad leader in Afghanistan. Saw the news, proud of you, Sergeant. Still fighting the good fight. She was. Just a different battlefield. The sun was setting over Phoenix as Brooklyn walked to her car. The parking lot was well lit now. Security cameras everywhere. Changes made in the wake of the scandal. Small victories. But victories nonetheless. Her phone rang. Sarah Chen, the former English teacher who'd warned her about Mason. Brooklyn, I wanted you to know, I'm coming back, taking a position at Lincoln. If you can face them down, so can I. That's wonderful, Sarah. The students need good teachers. They need brave teachers. You showed us how to be brave. After the call, Brooklyn sat in her car for a moment, watching the last rays of sunlight paint the sky orange and pink. She thought about Mason, starting his first month in state prison, about Richard Rodriguez, his empire crumbling, his name now synonymous with corruption, about all the teachers who'd suffered in silence. Then she thought about tomorrow's classes, the DNA lesson she'd perfect, the students who'd learn without fear, the hallways where young teachers could walk without looking over their shoulders. Her phone buzzed one more time, a notification from the district portal. 3 more schools had signed up for self-defense training. The program was expanding statewide. Brooklyn smiled and started her car. She had lesson plans to write, training sessions to prepare. The war wasn't over. It never really was. But she'd won this battle. And sometimes that was enough. As she drove home, she passed a billboard that made her laugh out loud. It was an ad for a local martial arts studio. Learn Krav Maga, because sometimes no isn't enough. At the bottom, in smaller text, inspired by true events. The studio owner had reached out after the trial, offering her a partnership. She'd accepted. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, she taught free classes to teachers, healthcare workers, and anyone else who dealt with aggressive people in their jobs. Your body is your first classroom, she'd tell each new group. And the first lesson is that you have the right to defend it. 6 months later, not a single teacher in the district had needed to use the physical techniques Brooklyn taught. They hadn't needed to. The knowledge alone had changed how they carried themselves, how they set boundaries, how they refused to be victims. The predators could sense it, like animals recognizing a fellow predator. They stayed away from the teachers who walked with their shoulders back, who documented everything, who knew exactly where to grab a wrist to make someone reconsider their life choices. On the anniversary of the incident, Brooklyn received a package, no return address, but she recognized Connor's handwriting. Inside was a simple note, "Thank you for showing me that standing by is the same as participating. I promise to never be a bystander again." Below the note was a photo from his college campus. He was teaching a self-defense workshop to incoming freshmen, focusing on bystander intervention. The cycle of empowerment continuing. Brooklyn framed the photo and hung it in her office, next to her military commendations and teaching certificates. Different battles. Same war. The war against those who thought power meant the right to take what they wanted. She'd won this round, and she'd keep fighting, keep teaching, keep standing between the predators and their prey, because that's what warriors did. They protected those who couldn't protect themselves, until everyone could. The chemistry lab had been renovated after the incident. New equipment, better lighting, and prominently displayed in a frame by the door the school's new policy on harassment, written in part by Brooklyn herself. The first line read, "Lincoln High School maintains a zero-tolerance policy for harassment of any kind." But it was the last line that mattered most. Every member of our community has the right to defend themselves against unwanted physical contact by any means necessary. Some called it the Brooklyn Doctrine. She just called it common sense. As for Mason Rodriguez, his prison stint became a cautionary tale whispered in country club locker rooms. The boy who thought money made him untouchable. Brought down by a 100-ton, 20-pound teacher who refused to be touched. He'd learned a valuable lesson that day in the chemistry lab. Sometimes, when you reach for someone without permission, they reach back, and sometimes they know exactly where to grab. Brooklyn's story became required reading at teaching colleges across the country. Professor Diana Martinez at Arizona State University incorporated the case into her education law curriculum. The Hayes Protocol, as academics called it, became the gold standard for documenting and responding to harassment in educational settings. What Miss Hayes understood, Professor Martinez told her students, was that predators rely on institutional blindness. They count on victims being too scared, too isolated, or too concerned about their careers to fight back. She removed all three obstacles. The ripple effects continued. Madison Taylor, a first-year teacher in Minnesota, successfully used Brooklyn's documentation method to expose a predatory principal. Skylar Johnson in Texas prevented an assault by simply stating, "I'm recording this interaction," when cornered by an aggressive parent. Harper Williams in Florida cited the Brooklyn Doctrine when her school board tried to discourage her from filing a police report. The check was for $500,000. Wrong move, soldier. Indeed, the war continued, but for the first time in a long time, the good guys were winning.